The day of my engagement party was the day my half-sister, Sophie, decided to publicly detonate her life in a bid to ruin mine. She projected a video of herself and my fiancé, Leo, for everyone to see. A desperate, last-ditch effort to force us apart. I stood there, looking at her triumphant smirk and at Leo standing awkwardly beside her, and I said, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "A conniving half-sister and a spineless fraud. It's a match made in heaven." I was on the stage, about to exchange vows with Leo Sterling, when I heard the whispers ripple through the crowd of guests. Clara Vance really lucked out. Someone snickered. If her sister wasn't so much more charming, this wedding would never have been on the table. I glanced over, and of course, it was the same clique of women who had made a sport of mocking me ever since my family's fortunes began to wane. Just as their words hung in the air, the large screen behind the stage flickered to life. It wasn't our planned slideshow of romantic photos. Instead, it was a grainy, intimate video. Sophie's voice, syrupy and fake, filled the hall. "Leo, it's all my fault. I can't be your bride. After tonight, let's just be strangers, okay?" Then came Leo's pathetic, pleading response. "I won't let you talk about yourself like that. You're the one I love." What followed was a series of sounds that left no doubt as to what was happening. The guests erupted in a shocked uproar. I didn't flinch. I looked toward the back of the room where my half-sister, Sophie Vance, was watching me with a wide, provocative smile. I knew she'd try something to ruin my engagement party, but I hadn't expected her to be so brazen as to broadcast her own private moments to the world. She wanted to see me break down, to see me scream and cry. She was disappointed. I just raised an eyebrow at Leo, who stood frozen on the stage. "Marrying me must be such a burden for you," I said coolly. Before he could stammer out a reply, I ripped the marriage certificate we had just signed in half and threw the pieces in his face. While the guests were still processing the shock, I lifted the hem of my long skirt and walked off the stage. I made a beeline for the two women who had been gossiping the loudest, grabbed a fistful of each of their elegantly styled hair, and delivered two sharp slaps. Then, with everyone watching, I walked out. My best friend Maya was waiting outside in her car. I jumped in, kicked off the painful high heels, and felt my bare feet sink into the plush floor mats. Just as members of the Vance family started to emerge from the hall, Maya floored it. The sports car shot forward, leaving them in a cloud of exhaust. I sat back, pulled out my phone, and began messaging my assistant, simultaneously forwarding the details of the incident to a major social media marketing account I had on retainer. 5 minutes later, the story was breaking online. #Heiress exposes affair at sister's engage me auntie. #Sophie Vance secret video. #scandalous engagement party. Watching the view counts and comments explode, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Now, the Sterling family had no choice but to deal with Sophie. And if Leo married her, their real problems were just beginning. Back at the party, the chaos I had left behind was reaching a crescendo. The matriarch of the Sterling family, who had personally arranged this marriage alliance, turned white with fury. She slammed her wineglass down and stormed out. Even Leo's usually cheerful father wore a stony expression as he followed his wife. Leo, the star of the scandalous video, was left standing helplessly on the stage, the torn certificate at his feet. No one felt sorry for him. The sight of a man cheating with his fiancée's sister elicited nothing but scornful delight from the assembled guests. The event ended abruptly, a complete and utter farce. I had already instructed my contacts within our social circle to spread the rumor that Sophie and Leo had left the party in the same car. I could just picture her playing the victim, manipulating him further. "I have to hand it to you," Maya said, glancing over at me as I furiously typed on my phone. "Your fiancé cheats on you with your sister at your own engagement party, and your first move is to handle the PR fallout. It's a whole new level." I scoffed, not looking up from my screen. "If you had seen the man in that video, you'd understand why I'm so calm. I, Clara Vance, am not interested in second-rate goods." Maya stared at me for a second, then burst out laughing. A small smile touched my lips as I finished assigning tasks to my assistant. It wasn't until I was settled in at Maya's house that my father called. I put him on speaker, and his enraged voice filled the room. "Clara Vance, what is the meaning of this? How dare you just walk out?" I continued replying to emails on my laptop, a smirk playing on my lips. You have the nerve to blame me? The person who ruined this engagement was your precious daughter, Sophie. She's the one who played that video to steal her sister's fiancé. According to the house rules you always preached, what's the punishment for that? If I recall, it was being beaten half to death and locked in the basement with the dogs. The breathing on the other end of the line grew heavy. Before he could explode, I added softly, instead of yelling at me, you should be figuring out how to convince the Sterlings to let Leo marry your wonderful daughter. After all, a woman with no shame might have a hard time winning over the family elders. With that, I hung up and calmly went back to my work. My family, the Vances, had built their fortune in the textile industry. They were once at the top, a respected name. But after my grandparents and my mother passed away, my father took over and the family business began a steady decline. He was a man dedicated only to his own pleasure, and his new wife, a former secretary with a pretty face and not much else, did nothing to help. She gave birth to Sophie, securing her position as the new Mrs. Vance. Meanwhile, I was sent off to study in Europe, pushed out of the family and ignored for nearly a decade. I was only called back recently for one reason, another family marriage alliance. The Sterling family wanted the last valuable patent owned by the Vances and thought a marriage would be the easiest way to get it. However, Mrs. Sterling was a proud woman. She looked down on the flighty Sophie and had specifically requested me, the daughter with a reputation for competence. So now, with the engagement in shambles and her own son seen leaving with Sophie, Mrs. Sterling was beyond furious. She immediately sent her bodyguards to retrieve Leo and Sophie. Leo knelt on the floor of the Sterling mansion, looking up at his mother's thunderous expression. "Mother," he pleaded, "now that it's come to this, please, just let me marry Sophie." Mrs. Sterling glanced at Sophie, who was kneeling beside him, her head bowed but with a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Thinking his mother's silence was a sign of acquiescence, Leo pressed on. "I know what you and father were thinking. They're both Vance daughters, so what does it matter who I marry? Besides, Sophie grew up in the Vance family. She has much more polish than Clara." The words were barely out of his mouth when a teacup flew through the air and smashed against his face. Mrs. Sterling, her disappointment now curdled into pure rage, sneered at him. "You fool! Do you think I arranged this marriage for the scraps of the Vance family fortune? I'll tell you why I did it. I did it for Clara Vance." She explained that I had established my own successful design brand abroad at the age of 19, a brand whose revenue surpassed what was left of the entire Vance clothing line. "If you weren't so useless," she spat, "do you think I'd be in such a hurry to find you a wife who could actually earn a living? And you talk about polish? A truly cultured person would broadcast a video of herself with her own sister's fiancé at their engagement party?" Leo, stunned, suddenly raised his head. "Mother, it wasn't Sophie's fault, it was Clara. She set this whole thing up." That earned him a hard slap across the face from his mother. "If you say one more word, you and this shameless creature can get out of this house together." She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with disappointment. "I'm giving you 3 days. If you still want to break the engagement with Clara, then don't ever come back." Leo hesitated for a moment, but before he could speak, a servant grabbed him and dragged him to the basement. Sophie was unceremoniously thrown out the front door. The photographers hiding near the Sterling estate, tipped off by Maya's media company, captured everything. Before the Vance family could even think to buy their silence, Maya and I had made sure the pictures of the second Vance daughter being kicked out of the Sterling mansion were trending. I felt no remorse for doing something so ruthless. The first rule of survival in these circles is to be merciless to those who threaten your interests, especially someone like Sophie, who had usurped my place. Before I returned to the country, the Vance family was grooming Sophie to be the heir. It's hard to believe that in just a few years the family had fallen so far. But even a weakened Vance family still held valuable patents, and Sophie was the heir apparent. Instead of learning the business, she had crafted a persona for herself as an online influencer, a self-proclaimed guardian of classic style. But her shallow understanding was often exposed. She recently tried to sell machine-embroidered fabrics as high-end, handcrafted goods during a live stream, damaging the family's already fragile reputation. The dumber my enemy, the better my chances of taking back what was mine. 3 days later, just as I predicted, the Sterling family released news of a marriage alliance with the Vance family. But this time, the bride was not me, but my sister, Sophie. I knew what she was thinking. Leo was the only son, the undisputed heir. Once the scandal died down, she would apologize and everything would be fine. She would be the future Mrs. Sterling. What she and Leo didn't understand was that his parents were shrewd business people. They could see right through Sophie's pathetic schemes. By allowing the marriage, they weren't forgiving Leo. They were cutting him loose. The title of Sterling family heir was about to be passed to someone else. The Sterlings spent a fortune buying up all the copies of the scandalous video, which was a nice payday for the marketing accounts controlled by my best friend. On the day of her own engagement party, Sophie came to my studio to deliver an invitation. She was wearing a dress from the Sterling family's clothing line, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Next month, on the 10th, is my engagement party with Leo," she said sweetly. "I hope you'll come, sister. Even though you've been kicked out of the family, we're still family. Leo and I have overcome so much to be together. We want your blessing." She widened her eyes, playing the innocent victim. I sat back in my chair and gave a cold laugh. I picked up the heavy cardstock invitation between two fingers and slowly dropped it into the trash can. "I never knew you could marry into a wealthy family just by taking your clothes off," I said, sizing her up. "You're more resourceful than I gave you credit for." Sophie's expression flickered. Before she could retort, I added with a smirk, "Just the other day, some colleagues of mine in London were asking about you. They were wondering what your rates are. They said your performance was quite impressive. Was that your mother's idea?" That was enough. The mask of civility shattered. Her face twisted in rage as she pointed a finger at me. "Clara Vance, don't you dare be so arrogant. I invited you because I was being gracious. You've been thrown out of this city like a stray dog. I'm the future Mrs. Sterling. What are you? A little nobody with no mother to teach you manners." She lunged forward to slap me, but I easily blocked her arm, twisted it behind her back, and threw her to the floor. Her engagement party was a subdued affair. Only a few obscure media outlets reported on it, a far cry from the media circus my own had become. Maya sent me a message saying that Sophie looked pale and defeated on the stage, all her earlier arrogance gone. I looked at the message and smiled. "Aren't you going to send a wedding gift?" I texted back, then shut my phone off. I looked up at the interviewer, who was staring at my resume with a frown. "Miss Vance," he said finally, "to be frank, you have your own successful brand overseas. Your designs are world-class. There's no reason for you to come work for our company, Croft Designs. What made you choose us?" I smiled. "I just feel that my design philosophy is a good fit for your brand." After a moment, the interviewer glanced at his phone, then smiled back at me. "Congratulations, Miss Vance. Welcome to the team." On the car ride back to my apartment, I looked through the messages Maya had sent me about Sophie. The Sterling family had spent a fortune to have all the negative stories about their new daughter-in-law removed from the internet. Meanwhile, the Vance family, desperate to secure the marriage, had dismissed their official brand spokesperson and given the endorsement deal to Sophie. Seeing her saccharine smile on billboards across the city, it felt for a moment like I was the one who had lost everything. I lowered my eyes and deleted the messages one by one. Then I sent a simple text. "I'm in. It's your turn, Julian." Sophie would have her moment in the spotlight, but like fireworks, she was destined to burn out quickly. After the interview, I officially merged my domestic studio with Croft Designs, taking the helm of their most popular national-style clothing line. I had two reasons for this. First, my own foundation in the country was still weak. Relying on the capital and infrastructure of Croft Designs would allow me to compete more effectively with Sophie and the Vance family. The second reason was simpler. The founder of Croft Designs, my former university senior Julian Croft, was the long-lost son of the Sterling family, the real heir. Julian's DNA test results were due to come back on the very day of Sophie and Leo's engagement party. Mrs. Sterling was overjoyed to find the son she thought she had lost forever. Seeing how successful Julian had become on his own, she had long since written off the fake heir, Leo. When I merged my studio with his company, Sophie, who looked down on me, even sent a congratulatory gift of some unique Vance family fabric, a petty reminder that no matter what I did, the family business was still hers. I ignored it. Julian had already told me his plan. Our brand's new product launch was scheduled to coincide with Sophie's. If my sales surpassed hers, Croft Designs would increase its investment in my brand, helping me acquire the Vance family company. Julian's only demand was 5% of the shares and a pretend business marriage to help him solidify his position as he took over the Sterling family. A genius designer with a proven market sense was an asset the Sterling Group couldn't ignore. While Sophie was spending a fortune on influencer marketing, my team and I were focused on the basics, sourcing the best fabrics and perfecting our production lines. Julian dragged me in front of a camera to shoot a promotional short film that we released online. The response was incredible. My international reputation, combined with the brand's quality materials and expert tailoring, attracted exactly the consumers we were targeting. Our authentic promotion of traditional style for the modern career woman completely overshadowed Sophie's flashy influencer campaign. An informant Julian had placed within the Vance company told us that when Sophie saw our video trending, she flew into a rage and destroyed her office. A week later, the Sterlings hosted a party. Julian and I were invited, and my official identity was his fiancé. The Croft family held considerable sway, so even the new Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, Leo and Sophie, had to reluctantly come over and toast us. I looked at Sophie, who already looked tired and worn down, and smiled. "It seems my sister isn't doing so well at the Sterling house. You've aged quite a bit in just 2 months." Her expression froze. My words had clearly hit a nerve. Even though the video scandal had been suppressed, Leo's rivals still used it to mock him, and he took his humiliation out on Sophie at home. The Vance family was also having financial trouble, and Sophie's overspending on her brand's promotion had put her in a difficult position with her own family. In contrast, I was thriving. I linked my arm with Julian's and smiled sweetly at her. "By the way, sister, you should really try to find a good match for yourself one day." This time, even Leo frowned. He was clearly intimidated by Julian, who had built his own success from nothing, unlike Leo, the pampered, fake heir who still had no idea Julian was his replacement. In September, my studio's autumn collection launched. We offered a range of styles from versatile basics to innovative statement pieces, all targeting young professional women at an affordable price point. Sophie, meanwhile, had hired an expensive celebrity for her campaign, putting a lot of pressure on us. But a week later, the poor quality of her brand's clothing became a major issue online. Having overspent on promotion, she had cut costs on fabric and production. Customers complained about loose threads, poor stitching, and colors that didn't match the website photos on garments costing hundreds of dollars. Then, a popular blogger pointed out that the sizing was absurdly small, with the largest size being equivalent to a medium, effectively excluding a huge portion of consumers. Sophie's social media was flooded with complaints. It broke her. In a late-night rant, she responded to her customers with sarcasm. "It's normal sizing. If you can't fit into it, maybe you should think about whether you've gained weight. Fat people don't deserve to wear my designs." Even I was shocked by her stupidity. Spoiled her entire life, she couldn't handle the slightest criticism. I sent the screenshots to Julian, who immediately had his PR team amplify the post criticizing her. The entire internet turned against her. At that moment, my studio began its second wave of promotion. I took a different approach. Instead of using professional models, I invited women of all shapes, sizes, and appearances to try on our clothes and give their feedback. I personally listened to their ideas and used them to improve our designs, expanding our size range to be as inclusive as possible. The promotional video of this process went viral. Customers were touched by our brand's sincerity and commitment to quality. The comments poured in. "This feels so genuine, and the quality is amazing. I bought from both brands and returned all of Sophie's. Clara's clothes actually fit a real body. The coats are incredible. The stitching is perfect, and it's cheaper than Sophie's brand." At our next company-wide meeting, Julian projected these comments onto a screen. "This season's revenue has reached a new high," he announced with a smile, looking at me. "Let's congratulate our founder, Clara Vance." He led the applause, and I stood up to thank my team. He then publicly promised stock options in the brand for every member of my design team. While we held a celebration banquet, the Vance family was in a state of crisis. Because of Sophie's disastrous PR, their return rate was sky high and their quarterly report was a sea of red ink. Having spent so much on advertising, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Sophie tried to get help from Leo but discovered he was useless. His credit cards were supplementary cards from his mother. Once she cut him off, he was broke. The two had a massive fight and entered a cold war. Then their standoff was broken by a new arrival. A young woman from the nightlife scene who showed up at the Sterling Company headquarters, pregnant and claiming Leo was the father. He had offered her money for an abortion and nothing more. Furious, she caused a massive public scene, and the Sterling family was once again at the center of a humiliating scandal. Mrs. Sterling was apoplectic. As I was reading about the latest drama online, I got a message from Julian. "Clara, we need to go to the Capitol. Pack your bags, we're leaving now." Just a few months after leaving the Capitol in disgrace, I was returning as a conqueror. Looking down at the city lights from the plane, I thought of my mother, dying in a hospital bed, hooked up to a ventilator. In the next room, my father had been with his secretary, Sophie's mother. A teenage Sophie had burst into my mother's room, pushed me so hard I hit my head on the corner of the bed, and sneered down at me as blood dripped down my forehead. "My mom is pulling the plug on your mom tomorrow," she had said. "From now on, I'm the young lady of this house. You have 5 hours to get out." And just like that, I was kicked out of my own home. My uncle arranged for me to study in Europe, where I fought to build a life for myself, all the while planning my revenge. The butler led Julian and me into the Sterling family home. Leo was kneeling on the floor. When he saw me, his eyes widened in disbelief. "Clara, how did you get here?" I just smiled and stepped aside, revealing Julian. Leo's face went pale, as he seemed to remember the rumors that had circulated a while back, that he was so incompetent he couldn't possibly be a real Sterling. Mrs. Sterling walked past him and embraced Julian warmly. "Son, why did you take such a late flight?" She then linked her arm with mine. I was worried about my daughter-in-law, too. She pulled Julian and me over to the sofa, seating us in a place of honor right in front of the kneeling Leo. I glanced over and saw Sophie standing silently to the side, her head bowed, not even afforded a place to sit. She was no better than a servant. After some pleasantries, Leo called out tremulously, "Mom!" Mrs. Sterling looked at him with cold detachment. "You are not my son. Your grandmother swapped you with my real son at birth to give you a better life. If my true son hadn't been so capable and found his own way back, I would still be cleaning up the messes of someone else's child." She looked at Leo with utter disgust. "I thought, after raising you for over 20 years, that if you would just enter into a respectable marriage, I could let you stay in this family. But you had to marry an illegitimate daughter and disgrace our name with your affairs." She gestured to the servants. "I have no reason to keep you." The servants hauled Leo to his feet and dragged him out of the house. Sophie was pulled out along with him. Just like that, they were gone. With Julian in charge, backed by my promise to revitalize the Sterling Group's failing high-end brands and integrate my own successful company, the board of directors quickly voted him in as the new CEO. As soon as the power transfer was complete, I walked into Julian's new office and handed him my resignation. "Miss Vance," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, "please give me a reason." I swiped my phone and showed him a news report about the impending bankruptcy of the Vance family company. "I can help you," he offered. "If you help me acquire it, whose company is it? Yours or mine?" I replied. "Don't think that because I played along as your fiancé for a few months that I'm naive." He conceded with a nod. He signed my resignation papers and, as a parting gift for my help, gave me a substantial sum of money. That, combined with my own earnings from Europe, was more than enough. My best friend Maya's company acted as the nominal buyer, and the remaining Vance family shareholders, desperate for cash, sold off the company's equity and patents for a pittance. Of course, I wasn't going to let them enjoy the money. After being thrown out, Sophie quickly cut ties with Leo. He, in turn, having no money, fell into a gambling addiction. Deep in debt, he tried to blackmail Sophie with the old video from my engagement party. She went to his rundown apartment to confront him. In the ensuing argument, in a moment of rage, he stabbed her in the stomach. He panicked and fled, leaving her to bleed to death. Her body wasn't discovered for days. When her mother was called to identify the body, she collapsed from a heart attack and died right there. That left only my father. With his wife and daughter gone and millions in his pocket from the company sale, he was relieved. He was free to indulge himself, but I wouldn't let him have his happy ending. I found Anna, the younger sister of a design intern my father had driven to suicide years ago. I gave her a new identity, a luxurious wardrobe, and a purpose. She seduced him. For 3 months, she was his favorite companion at his private club, and for 3 months, she quietly sprinkled a slow-acting powder into his wine. Just as planned, 3 months later, he collapsed. When he woke up, he was paralyzed in a hospital bed, and I was sitting beside him, smiling. He stared at me in terror, trying to move to call for help, but he couldn't. I showed him a picture on my phone of his recent young lover. Anna, I said thoughtfully. Her older sister was Celeste, a design student. You remember her, don't you? You tried to exploit her. She refused. You had her blacklisted, and she took her own life. His eyes widened in horror. He whimpered, unable to move as Anna herself walked into the room. I handed her a bank card. This contains all of your father's liquid assets. Consider it compensation. He will be lying in this bed for the rest of his life. You can visit him whenever you like. I gave my father one last meaningful look. Don't worry, I said with a half smile. He's tough. As I closed the door to the ward, I heard his muffled wails and the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. Half a month later, I officially took control of the Vance family company. I cleared out the old guard and brought in a new, younger team. My original design team, who I had left with Julian, all contacted me, wanting to come back. To my surprise, Julian readily agreed, even giving them a large severance package. The old Vance studio, silent for decades, was suddenly vibrant again. As I was sorting through the company archives, I discovered a treasure trove, my grandfather's old notebooks, filled with lost techniques and notes on rare fabrics he had discovered from old artisans. It was a legacy Sophie had ignored, left to gather dust. I carefully arranged them on the bookshelf in my new office. With these resources and my revitalized team, our first new collection was a massive success, outselling even Julian's most popular brands. My European brand won another prestigious design award with a centerpiece crafted from fabrics based on my grandfather's notes. 5 years later, then 10, designers and brands cultivated by the new Vance company were recognized all over the world. My future, and the future of my family's legacy, was incredibly bright.